Okay, we are live. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Holy Humanist. Happy Saturday to everyone, whoever's watching around the world. I hope you're having a fabulous start to the weekend. Today, we have the one and only Hanney Salim with us from Critical Faculty. So Hanney, massive welcome to Holy Humanist. This is our first interaction. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm very thrilled to be here.
Oh no, I'm so glad we did this because, to be honest, I came across your channel a while ago. I think it was through one of Derek Lambert's, one of Myth Vision's podcasts. I think you came on, and I just heard like tidbits of your story and your exposure to both Islam and Christianity by virtue of like your background and your upbringing and things like that. And I was like, wow, I really need to I would love to kind of like pick this man's story a bit more because you've kind of like played both sides of the coin, if that makes sense.
Very much
so yeah, exactly. And I have to say, so first of all, before we actually get stuck into it, guys, the Hanney's channel is in the description, and I will be pinning it in the chat as we move along in this conversation. So please do go ahead and subscribe. We're going to talk about what Hanney's doing with his YouTube channel as well. But yeah, I mean, I save things, they're just on in the background because genuinely, even as an ex-Muslim, I learned so much because you go beyond that realm, and now you're talking about things that are honestly interesting to somebody who's left the fold of religion behind, and you're trying to unpack these more kind of philosophical, scientific, rational understandings, and you're learning along the way about how many other like religions and dogmas that you come out of lead to the same thing. So you've actually had people like Lawrence Krauss on your podcast, and because you're bilingual, you do amazing conversations in Arabic, which my Arabic's very basic. I wish I could understand that more, but I do save them to improve my Arabic. But yeah, so please go ahead and subscribe. We will talk about it more, and I'll pin it in the chat later on if you guys aren't convinced already. But yeah, so Hanny, how are you doing?
Very good. Thank you very much. I'm all right. Just had a broadcast a few hours ago with Dr. Robert Price talking about abortion.
Oh, wow. Yes, that's extremely relevant at the moment, isn't it? Especially in the American context with what's happening.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, and that's another thing I really do appreciate, the fact that you have brought Robert Price on a number of times and kind of challenged the most, like insane allegations about like racism, and you kind of had the guts to have like platform him and say, okay, let's go through this one by one, and here's where I agree and here's where I don't, and that could be borderline interpreted wrongly. So again, massive kudos, because not many people are willing to, I mean, in this day and age with platforming people and the cancel culture, it's so easy to just say, no, I don't want to host anybody with views like that on my platform, but you kind of dive in the deep end. So yeah, that's, I mean,
Nuria, how else are we going to change the world we live in? I mean, you can't change bad ideas by running away from them and pretending they're not around. The only way to change things is by challenge them courageously. So I think having and this conversation today, he was completely on a different opposite side of me. He was pro life and I was pro choice. But we thought, well, let's have a dialogue to see how close can we get. And amazingly, we were so close to each other.
Wow.
But yeah, it wasn't that different, because once you get into the detail, and I put in front of him certain scenarios where choice of abortion might be the only logical and the right thing to do, he kind of accepted some of the positions. But then I've also accepted some of his. He's an atheist, so he does not appeal to any supernatural realms whatsoever. But he thinks life is special, and I kind of agree. You know, not in an egotistic way, but more in yes, we're here. I mean, the whole thing is made possible by us through being live. So I'm alive, and therefore I can think and I can have a chat with you. So it's a little bit special. We gotta have to agree.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think the same, like kind of in a way, the Socratic discussion you had with him on the more racist thing as well was very interesting, because I saw you were really trying to kind of be like, okay, how far can I go to meet you? How much can I push being in agreement with you before I say, okay, this is where I draw the line. And it's because you are having these conversations that are pushing those boundaries, and that's amazing to watch. So yeah, I mean, please carry on doing what you're doing. We will talk about it more. I want to know like what sprung you into this. But for now, for obviously my viewers who don't really know you or haven't come across you in the same way, if you could just please kind of give us a little snapshot into who you are, like your background, your upbringing, that kind of thing.
Right. My background is not very well. It's kind of interesting and not at the same time, because I, when it comes to religious background and my struggle with religion or faith, it was completely uneventful in a way, because I was born into a family of non-practicing Muslim and Christians at the same time, an Egyptian mother, sorry, an Egyptian father, an Irish mother, and even though we brought up sort of freedom of religion, all books of all faiths and philosophies and psychologies and all sort of things were readily available at home. So I could make a choice if I wanted to practice a religion or not. So it was never a struggle for me. So I don't have a traumatic experience with religion, and that's why I think it's reflected. I don't have the anger that a lot of people, and rightly so. You know, I don't want to be a judge here, because I could be playing it cool and not feeling what people had to endure to exit religion. So I can judge those extreme stories. But what I'm arguing against is, whatever you do not stay in that trauma for a very long time, because when you begrudge a situation, you're actually imprison yourself. You need to free yourself at some stage and become who you're supposed to be. Living in anger and frustrations and animosity with a certain idea, even though you've departed long ago, it could be quite sort of hindering, if you wish. I think you're muted.
Sorry, yeah, the sirens out here are crazy today. So yeah, sorry, I was gonna say I didn't know if I should actually bring that up, but that's the sense that I get. I think that's why I find it so enjoyable to listen to your conversations, because you know, you come from it from such a kind of like pragmatic, rational, almost a stoic approach, and you can see that. You can see obviously people who, you know, need to speak out against religion or dogma of a certain kind, because it's almost cathartic in a way for them to almost deal with their trauma from that religion. So it almost becomes like a sense of purpose. But again, these topics are so heavy and they're so sensitive, especially Islam, right? That's the one where we really, really get like, oh, should I be saying this? So I completely agree with you. There's different approaches that appeal to certain people. And, you know, when people haven't clear, because we understand how traumatic religion can be on the psyche, on somebody's life, on all of that. But you're right, it definitely comes across in the approach that you use to handle these conversations and say things. So again, the distinction is so important to whenever speaking about Islam. Like, this is, okay, Islam maybe ruined my life in X, Y, and Z way, but that has no bearing on Muslims or the people around me that are following this ideology, whether out of ignorance or because they're born into it or because they're happy to stay cultural Muslims. So that genuinely comes across in your approach, and I feel like I'm very much in that camp as well. I want to come from it from a very almost I borderline want it to be lighthearted at times. You know, these are just conversations that are happening.
Yes.
We're not here to like change your mind in an instant, but just hear what we have to say and go back and do your homework. And everyone is on their own journey. So like I definitely see that in your approach, and I really, really do commend that. And also, just as a side note, for anybody watching, if you do feel that like traumatic residue of religion, which is very much a real thing. That's why there's programs out there like Recovering from Religion, who actually also go into the nitty gritty of how it affects your psyche. But even with me, for example, the way that Islam nearly kind of took away my liberty based on Sharia law, that was a whole process that I had to like work through. And as Hanny said, there was some heavy like trauma there. I don't know if I fully attributed it to Islam, but again, that was something that I went and I worked through, and boom, it's like it's all gone. And you're like, you know how you are, Hanny, when you touch the black stone in the Kaaba and your newborn baby? Sometimes therapy does that to you in a much better way.
it's people, and that's why you can't really judge, because I see the material available right now on YouTube it varies. Some people need that first shock, and the shocking material is important, because it might sound that I'm arguing against the unsophisticated approach to critiquing Islam, but that's
Mm.
not true. Uh, the shock needs still be there, because there's some people cannot be the cast can or the spell cannot be lifted unless you shock them firsthand. But just like primary school, you got to learn the alphabets before you start to learn about quantum mechanics. And I think I come later on. It's like, what then you do with yourself? Okay, you left religion, so what? What then? And this is where I come, is okay, well, you left religion. This is where we can fill in the gaps, because there are lots of gaps that be left open, like the numinous, or the awe, or the feeling of spirituality. What is spirituality? Can we have spirituality without supernaturals and things like that? So this is where I come, and an old sort of education is required, and none of them is superior. You don't come to quantum mechanics before you learn how to read and write. So that's how I see it, and it's very important.
Yeah, and I think that's why I resonated so much with your channel, because as you're saying, it is for people, genuinely, it's aimed at those conversations that you're willing to have beyond the scope of religion. And when you've gone past all of that, like, oh, but what's subjective morality and what's subjective morality and all of those kind of arguments and the Kalam argument, and you've been there, you've explored all those ideas, and you're like, no, okay, not for me. I'm confident in my position that Islam or any kind of religion is not the truth. Where do I go from here? And your exploration of ideas is just so nice, because these are the conversations that I'm striving to understand, which is why I'm saying, don't know if I'm even ready to have them at the level you have, because you've like absorbed so much now. The purpose of this channel is more keep the focus on Islam, but personally, I'm at the level where I'm listening to conversations that you're kind of having, and I'm like, this is the intellectual stimulation that is like required. Once you have dealt with all of that and you can confidently say, right, I'm not here to sit and debate with Muslims and change all their minds. I'm on my own journey and I'm here, but we have to remember how dangerous Islam is. So that's why I'm really
Yes.
glad. I think this conversation we're having is good, because it almost like bridges both of those sides of the fence, if that makes sense. So Hanny, I think you were extremely lucky, might I say, in not having kind of religion imposed on you or shoved down your throat in that way as a child growing up. So just in your like young mind, when you have exposure to both of these religions, where were you like, let me holistically take on both of these as my identity, or were you kind of veering towards one more than the other? Or how do you balance the Christian element and the Islamic element at home?
Yeah. So a lot of people are asking in the chats. I'll skip to the very end and I'll backtrack a bit. So I'm an atheist right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm an atheist, but I'm not a dogmatic atheist. So I can't prove there is no God. Definitely, the Abrahamic God cannot exist, because he defies one of the first laws of logic, which is the law of the law of non-contradiction. He's the married bachelor to me. He cannot exist. 'Cause yeah, for me, it's just illogical and inconsistent with logic. However, there could be different types of, not gods then at that point, but more like creators, and whether they're conscious or not. That's a different type of debate. Something like the God of Spinoza, who Einstein adopted at some point, who is not a god. He's not it's a non-agency. It's more of the pantheist approach to holistic approach, that we are part of a canvas, and the canvas sort of encompasses everything, and we're part of everything. So that might be sort of something that we can be considering, but I don't need to really live my life as if God exists, because if he's out there open to having a relationship with him, or with me, he would know exactly the key to my personality, what would convince me of his existence. So I don't really need to do much other than just navigating life, searching for truth, no matter where it is. And it doesn't have to be just who started it all. There are so many things in life that you want to explore, from physics to chemistry to biogenesis to biology, to so much going on here that we need to explore. And sometimes God gets in the way and narrows down your worldview and window to look at the world. Once you free yourself from that, imprisonment, you realize there's so much to wonder about, and there's so much to think about. So my dad was an atheist, even though he was a Muslim, born Muslim. My mother was kind of, well, born Catholic, but more like deistic, spiritual, non-practicing Christian. And the books were all, my dad loved philosophy so much. And we had all sort of books around psychology, philosophy growing up. And I took in religion as a point of challenge at some point, a teenager. So even though you love your parents, but you want to challenge them a bit. And
Mhm.
one of the best way to challenge them is to take the other approach to what they thinking that you're really pushing them around here. So I actually became I read Christianity and Islam, and I wanted to take Islam on for a journey, take it for a test drive.
Yeah.
And I returned the car within 2 years.
I mean, I would say drive right back to the showroom, honey, but 2 years is not bad at all.
It took me 2
Wow.
years.
Okay. So please, can you? I'm really excited. How did this test drive go?
Well, because sort of I was exposed to all different ideas. As soon as I started reading, my eyebrows were just going up and down all the time reading. There's so many different, and I could obviously read in Arabic, so I'm a native Arabic speaker too. So I can read and I can understand, and I love linguistics. I can speak, read, and write 7 languages. So I've got a brain that is sort of wired up for words and the meaning
Wow,
behind a
honey,
certain
you're a
word.
polyglot. That's amazing. Which
Yeah, well,
languages do you speak?
I speak German, Spanish, Italian, French. A bit of Hebrew, a bit of. I take on languages as I sort of move on in life. I love languages. I think they carry a lot of what we think, because the word carries more than just the meaning of the word. It's once you put in a certain construction, it takes a different life form. So I think words are very interesting.
Also, 100%. And sorry to interrupt there, but also, don't you agree that because I'm the same, I'm fascinated by languages, and my aim is to be where you are. I'm not there yet. I've probably got like 4 under my belt. But when you learn a different language, like for example, like even when you're speaking in French, the phrasing of the sentence or what they're saying actually it puts a new thought into your mind to actually see the world differently, because the way they're
Yes.
constructing their sentence is linked to how they are seeing the world. And the same thing with Arabic, right? So you're almost like you're introducing new thoughts and ways of thinking and observing the world through learning that language, which I find so crazy.
Language is a reflection of the thoughts and the culture of a country. There are some languages don't have future tense. I think it might be Finnish. And it has a reflection of what the culture sort of encapsulates. So it's quite interesting. There are some languages Arabic is very poetic, and that's why you find the Quran and the challenge issued by the God of the Quran, Allah, is quite an interesting one, because it's posing a challenge about something that's quite subjective. Is like
yes, exactly.
the Shakespearean play. Can you do better? It's like, what do you mean by better? That's like it's a subjective thing.
Homer's Iliad. You choose who's judging this? What's the criteria?
Exactly. What are the parameters? How do you judge this one is one or this one? But you can judge it by saying, well, the scientific claims in the Quran are actually incorrect. They can be verified as not to be true, and therefore it is not a perfect text by any stretch of the imagination.
It's funny when something so at the actual content and contextually it's so poor, yet it asks for this subjective challenge to the world. And it's like, really, you don't have a leg to stand on.
I think sorry, I'm going to say something in very quick in 30 seconds. I think posing the challenge to start with, it shows how sort of human-made the religion is. I mean, for an all-powerful being to take on humanity is such an immature move. It's almost like Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime, stepping into a bar and shoulder budge a toddler and say, "Well, are you challenging me? Let's go for an arm rest." I was like, "Come on."
Yes, that's exactly what I was just thinking. I was like, the creator, the Lord of the Lords, the Lord of the worlds, is challenging his own creation. Like, what?
It's crazy.
Absolutely makes no sense. And the fact that people still think that this is like a verified challenge that still exists and it's not been like, it's still not been surpassed or accepted, it just blows
But
my
you know,
mind.
we know that in our crowd. If you have a crowd of friends and there's that one friend is always looking for a challenge, doesn't that hide a bit of insecurity?
I was just gonna say there's some insecurity behind that, that's for sure. And then imagine that, honey, if you lump that in with don't ask too many questions because these things aren't for you to know, or like if you ask too many questions, you'll apostatize, so don't. Like there's
Crazy.
so many issues wrapped up in that. Clearly, you're not who you say you are. So just coming back to your situation a bit, so there's a young Hanny kind of wanting to be a bit rebellious and not like adhere to any side in particular, but then you're like, let me take Islam for this test drive. You speak Arabic, you can read the Quran like verbatim, face value, and is that just your young mind reading the contents? Did you have issues with it the very first time you started reading it, or was it kind of a slow burner?
No, straight away. I remember reading some verses that I think was the cow, Al-Baqarah, Surah
Bakara.
Al-Baqarah,
Yeah.
and some of the stuff was just, that when God was intending to create humanity, and the angel sort of saying, hold on a second, God, are you sure?
Yeah.
Cool it down, folks. I know what I'm doing. It's like,
Yeah.
it's so funny. It just sounded like, it's like I was trying to imagine the scene in my head, and I thought it was quite. Are these beings? I thought angels were made to obey, and
Yeah.
why are they suddenly sort of veto the judgment of God? Suddenly was like weird, and then
They seem
Satan.
to be shareholders in this board meeting, don't they? Like,
Yeah, and then I remember Satan's position, and I thought, you know what? This is a dude of principles. He's got some, and it's like, oh, kudos. I mean, that guy is actually a stand-up guy. He knows what the hell is going to happen to him. He's going to fry forever, but he is willing to stand up for his own sort of, you could call it wrong, but his own judgment and stand by it. And I thought that was quite noble. He wasn't a backstabber. Um, uh, Mind you, God has done a lot of backstabbing. The the way he buggered around with Job,
yeah.
along with Lucifer again, the morning star. In Judaism, Satan had a completely different role to play. He wasn't
Mm.
Satan of the Quran. Satan of the New Testament is completely different. And by the way, Judaism started with no concept of heaven or hell, no concept of afterlife, and Satan wasn't even there. He was called the adversary, and that was the very, very final writings of the Old Testament. So he didn't enter the scene until way later, and a completely different role.
Wow. Wow. So is that because I've heard the same thing about hell, like that as a concept was brought in later. But so in the Old Testament, do we not find any reference to hell per se? Or like definitely nothing like the Islamic hell?
It's called in Hebrew. It's called Gehenna.
Gehenna, okay, which is where we get Jahannam from in Arabic, right?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
And Gehenna is actually, and I spoke to Bart Ehrman, and we talked about this. So I
Okay.
have an episode with Bart Ehrman, and we talked about Gehenna. And Gehenna is a pit where you throw criminals' bodies after they've been executed. So whenever there is a reference to Gehenna, it actually means oblivion, not
Wow.
a torture after death.
Mhm.
As a matter of fact, the Jews believe that once they're dead, they're dead. That's it. But
Mhm.
then later writings have developed the idea of eternal life later on in a slightly different concept. But there's a very interesting debate with Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris, and two Jewish rabbis. And
Yeah.
actually, I love this debate. It's because it was so lighthearted. The
Yeah.
Jews are brilliant. I mean, especially they're so naturally atheistic. Even rabbis are.
Yeah. Yeah. You often find that.
That's so the conversation was so much fun for me. But that's
So
what
sorry,
Christopher
Hanny,
Hitchens.
just to do
Yeah,
they acknowledge? So do the rabbis acknowledge that
yeah,
Gehenna was this? Okay,
yeah.
wow.
There was no, that concept wasn't there, and they were trying to sell you the concept of a figure of speech and a sort of an emotional heaven. It's not like a real fire type of thing. And they're trying to take the conversation into sort of a spiritual realm that Christopher Hitchens stopped them right on their track and say, now, are you telling me that that God that you are telling, Yahweh, who is a God of war, by the way,
Yeah.
God, he descended from El, and he
Hmm.
was a small god that was sort of given a promotion to look after the Israelites, and he was a god of war. That's how he started. Literally, he was a god of war.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting you say that. Also, I love those Hitchens and like the tag team debates. So I'm definitely going to ask for the link for that one. I have to see this. I thought I'd seen them all, but clearly not. But that's so. I also like. I'm really keen to know now what like actual the lay Jew believes would happen after death. But just hold that thought for a second, because so I've been doing some like just a deep dive into historical Islam and like the more kind of South Arabian impact, the paganism, the Gnostic Christianity, like the Gnostic Christianity, like the text from Christianity and the Gnostics when Christianity was kind of like veering off into different trajectories and everybody was calling each other heretics. But so when Muhammad came around, obviously like one of the first gods as well that he had attributed like his cult, let's say, for lack of a better word, too, was actually based on, as you said, the subordinate almost of El, which was the god of war, and that's why like war was so inherently built into like the general like expansion of this cult, and it was like kind of war was really, let's say, what's the word? What's the opposite of vilified? It was encouraged and like what's the word? I can't think of it right now. But anyway, so yeah, so I see that, and you can tell when you look into any of these religions, whether it's Judaism, you see how this pantheon of gods kind of relays, and then they all choose their one, and then it becomes really localized. And even with the Islamic concept of Jahannam or hell, you can see where that direct link could have come from, that pit of Gehenna. And over time, obviously, you've got Judaism playing out, you've got Christianity playing out, then you've got Islam coming onto the scene, and they have taken this concept of this pit with the dead corpses and the horrific smells and whatever, everything bad and dark and horrible associated with that, and that's like blown out of proportion into the Islamic hell, where you're going to be roasted over and over again and be like
Mm.
hung with iron rods, and to the point where, Hanny, I was watching a stream yesterday, it actually says for the Jews and the Christians, even after the day of judgment, like when God is weighing up your sins, he is actually gonna trick the Jews and Christians when they ask for water. He's gonna say, you've got permission to go and have water, and they will
No, it's horrible.
unbeknowingly walk into the pits of hell. And you're like, even then God is the best of the deceivers. Even
Yeah,
after this, like, you're very on brand there.
yeah.
um
Some Muslims don't like the word deceivers. They say, no, no, hold on a second. It's a schemer. So it's huge difference. Huge difference.
because that's so much better, right? um but yeah, so okay, so Islam, so you started reading it, and then did you voice your, like, did you just keep that to yourself, that
So
like, you
this
know
is
what,
where I
Lord?
started to say something. Yeah, something isn't right. That the text will contain so many issues for me. And remember, I was at the age here of, I'm talking about maybe 15 when I
Mhm.
started to do that. I left Islam by the age of 17, and Christianity at the same time. Because I was never convinced with Christianity. I read more about Christianity growing up than Islam, because it was, to me, it was more the more interesting philosophically out of the two. Islam is pretty blunt and straightforward, like Judaism. Christianity is a little bit more sophisticated because it comes out of a Hellenistic culture, so there's a lot of tragedy and drama, and the Romans and the Greeks. There's a bit, but when we compare the Israelites and the Arabs, we're talking about nomadic tribes. So these were not very. When I say uncivilized, I don't mean here something horrible, but the word civilization is defined as people who have stable abode, and where they can sit in that particular area and issue rules and issue a culture and civilization. That's why the Egyptians or the Chinese or the Indians would be considered civilizations rather than a nomadic tribe. Just by the virtue of moving around doesn't give you the chance to settle down and start a civilization. So, in that sense, they were very similar. They were shepherds and simple people. So, therefore, their thoughts and their reflections are very primitive. While in Christianity, it's a lot more developed and still cuckoo, to me, but the more interesting kind of cuckoo.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like I wish, just for like intellectual stimulation purposes and a bit more like, drama and actual stories that have more depth to them, I think the Bible would be a much more fascinating read than sitting there memorizing the Quran half your childhood. You know what I mean? Also, the fact that it's so like readily available in English, and as you said, because of the Hellenistic like culture that it stems out of, you are combining all of these elements which are more fascinating, and the thoughts and myths that were even further beyond in time, and then you just see Islam's horrible like bastardization of those myths, but not even in a full way. So when I found bits of the Quran that actually really intrigued me, trying to put together like ancient history, so like the bits that talk about King Solomon or Bilqis, supposedly the Queen of Sheba, I was
Yeah,
like, this is interesting. And the Quran is like, oh yeah, the Queen of Sheba, this, kill the unbelievers wherever you find them. I'm like, just stick to the story,
yeah,
just 1 minute,
yeah.
please.
Yeah, give me
Um,
give me the Mother of Dragons type of sort of storyline, so I can get interested a bit. But yeah, I mean, if you look behind me in the background here, I'm fascinated by sort of the archetype, the Jungian archetype, and superheroes. So all these
yeah.
superheroes behind me, some of them are actually purchased from Dr. Robert Price because we
Oh
share the
wow.
same fascination. But
Yeah.
Superman is Jesus. So Superman is allegory of Jesus. He's got
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
yeah, the Man of Steel, where he sort of get to show his powers at the age of 30 only. His dad tells him not to reveal himself because the world is not ready for him. That's Kevin Costner in that scene before he was taken by the tornado. He got killed, and he was resurrected, in that recent edition of the movie. So Superman is Jesus. So
Yeah.
Jesus makes more of an interesting Jungian archetype. It's more fascinating, the warrior, that sort of redemptions and stuff like that. It's complex story. While in Islam, it's maybe a little bit too harsh here, but I find it sort of bland, and there isn't too much interesting going on. Um, so after about the first year, I've come to realize that something is dodgy. It's just something dodgy, and maybe I put it down to my young age, and I started engaging some imams and sheikhs and mosques, and the
Mm.
answers were non-answers. We're like, "What the hell you're doing here? You're not supposed to be thinking about these things," or given really, really, really low IQ answers. I was born in a house that household we read quite a lot. So I think at the age of 16, I've already bypassed the your regular imam in terms of checking the world outside, and these were people who are just their only knowledge was contained within the Quranic text, and I've already sort of passed that point. So at that
And
point,
honey, the science of hadith.
oh, yeah, yeah, especially that one with the fly. If one fly falls in someone's milk, you gotta dip the other wing because it has
The
a
other one cancels
coat.
it out.
You just can you believe? I mean, imagine. I'm just thinking of that scene of four people sitting down having a drink, and all the flies are running around. They keep dinking. They're instead of putting a biscuit in their tea, they're putting flies in their tea.
Oh my gosh. And can you imagine? They're like, right, we have to like summon a meeting. This is really important things we've got to discuss about the world. Can you kiss your wife during your fast? Let's have papers and papers on this and the rulings. Like, really, how are you going to get anywhere in life, like actually in reality, when these are the matters that you're dealing with and care about to this extent?
And the
It's
funny thing is, people are submitting scientific papers these days. Like the benefits of drinking camel's urine. and you read, you go into a scientific, go to Google Scholar, you'll find somebody with an abstract and trying to cite some science, and you just, people are gone cuckoo like bananas. I mean, are you serious? You are writing a scientific paper about the benefits of drinking the camel's urine in the 21st century.
It's wild. It's wild that people are still like, they have enough resolve to try and defend these things and still stand by them. Because, it's easy for people like you and I when we like read or we think about it and we're like, you know what? No, like, not for me. I can't defend this. I can't. And you just step. So, but it's harder to stay there and be like, oh, yeah, well, let me try and defend like a 6-year-old marriage in 2022 when everything about society and our fundamental laws tell us that is wrong. Do you know what I mean? Like everything, biologically, whatever. But you have papers. I think Yakin Institute issued a whole paper on Aisha's marriage. And you're like, they're still trying to do this.
You see, on Aisha's marriage, I've got a slightly different angle here because I
Mm.
would not use it against Muhammad as
Mm.
such. I'd use it against Allah because Muhammad, obviously, they were engaged at the age of 6 and the marriage was consummated at the age of 9. Still a child,
Mhm.
but these sort of things used to happen at that time. This is a time. Remember, this is a time where the average age, life expectancy, probably around 40, 45. So
Mhm.
you ought to start your life a little early. Imagine in today's society where you get married at the age of 30 or 35, and you get married, it's like, oh, by the way, you've got only 10 years to go before we finish it all. So people
Mhm.
used to start a bit early, but we're talking early couples, young, 52 years old and 9 years old is disgusting.
Yeah,
But
old enough to be her grandfather, pretty much.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's horrible for sure. But I would have expected God, he's talking to God. This is the time where God is sending messages to humanity. You would think at that point that, hold on a second here, this is a practice that is not very good for humanity. We hereby would like you to abolish. You're going to be the first one to say this sort of thing is wrong because
Yeah.
the age of consent has not been reached. And this would have been a marker of maybe somebody is definitely divinely talking to Muhammad, but it didn't happen. He did exactly what people used to do at the same time. So therefore, I will not judge him morally by today's standards, but I will just say he's just a man.
Hmm. I agree with you in the sense that he was definitely a product of his time, and that was the thing back in the day. Even in various cultures, we see that. Again, I agree with you in the sense that the fact that Allah Himself could be bothered to like abolish like gambling and interest and
Yeah.
usury and alcohol, but He doesn't care about this, flies in the face of Him being like all knowing and omniscient anyway. So that's cast a doubt on Allah. Could He not foresee this when clearly He's apparently since the beginning of time foresaw that Abu Lahab should burn in hell? So you're like, well, where is God's head at? But second of all, I would extend my like contempt for God to Muhammad in this case, because the amount of times the Quran says like obey Allah and follow the sunnah of the Prophet, and sometimes the Quran actually says like obey and follow me. So you're like, oh, who's really writing this? But the fact that Muhammad he's been like embedded in history and especially in the Islamic psyche as the perfect moral example for mankind. Therefore, any act that he does, I mean, a Muslim man, but any Muslim in general, but a Muslim man should technically be walking like Muhammad, eating like Muhammad, sleeping like Muhammad, brushing his teeth like Muhammad, wiping his bum like Muhammad. Do you know what I mean? Everything is there. This is the perfect man. So one of his actions like that, yeah, for sure, God is completely,
The
Allah
only
is to
problem
blame.
here, if you employ proper epistemology, we only know
Mhm.
about Muhammad is what people told us that they know about Muhammad. We don't know if he actually did any of that sort of thing. What if he did things differently? And people who remember, Sunnah and Hadith were written some 200 years ago in Bukhara, where Bukhari is. He's a non-Arab.
Exactly.
We're talking about outside of Arabia, 200 years after the event. How the hell did he know how Muhammad used to wipe his bum? I mean, how would he know? How would you know that piece of information?
And
And there
even
are
then,
clearly,
Hanny, apparently the information that he came across and he was given was like in the hundreds of thousands. He discarded over what, like how many hadiths, but I think over like 70% he just chucked away. And the ones that he kept is what we
and
have today.
mathematically impossible. I think he sort of handled like 300,000 hadith. If you
Yeah.
count how many hadith he can do, it's actually mathematically impossible for him to do in a lifetime. So I've done the
Wow.
calculations; it's impossible. So the amount of exaggerations where people have superhuman strength and capacities are all over the ancient world.
hmm And
It's
as
an
you said, Muhammad was not around to even verify what's in the hadith. He wasn't even really around to verify the Quran. So,
yeah,
as
yeah.
yeah, it could all be construed as complete hearsay. So when obviously you'd kind of in your head done away with Islam, you're like, these answers are not sufficient. And honestly, like I'm cleverer than these imams that I'm turning to. Also, I really want to say mad respect to your parents for being so well read and educated. And I really feel like, just as a parent, if you have a bookshelf at home with a broad range of topics and you're having these discussions, your children are going to naturally be inquisitive and not so dogmatic. So, in the same way, exactly when I was growing up, I know my parents are also quite like level-headed and relaxed. They're kind of, born and brought up in the UK. So it's not that strict principle. They were also kind of looking for, more answers and more of an understanding. So they had a wide range of books on like Sufism and all of this kind of stuff. And then my dad's got all the philosophers. Again, same thing as you, like it just encouraged that. He was, obsessed with Marcus Aurelius's meditations and just like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, what did they all have to say? So they were fine. They were like on a journey within Sufism, and that's where I kind of touched base there. And I was like, oh, but as you said, Islam, you touched on it earlier, is not even as well fun or enjoyable or intellectually stimulating, but also not as spiritually like deep as maybe things that you could extract from the Bible. So I found Islam very bland, as you rightly said. Like it's very much do this, don't do that, do this, don't do that. This fear, guilt, don't do everything fun is forbidden. So you're like, what is this like dreary existence that I have? So to make, for me to try and make like sense of this existence and kind of give it that purpose when you feel that existentialism creep in from Islam, and also you're in a psyche and every cell in my body was telling me if a God exists, he really should be more like just chilled out than this one. Like, why do you care if I went out or not, or did this or not? Like, surely you've got bigger fish to fry. So I was like Muslim in my heart fully, but in my head I was saying, oh, God is love and love is God, and kind of mixing up all these different things and reading Osho as well, and like trying to come to this thing where it is Allah, but Allah is not this hateful, vengeful Allah of like the Torah or the Quran, and like maybe he's a bit more like Jesus, who knows, like golden rule, let's just go with that. So how did you feel then when you kind of looked into the Christian side of things, and that push you, did leaving Islam kind of, or saying this is not right, push you more towards the Christian side of things?
Yeah, so I've sort of adopted at this point a strategy of you don't need to drink the entire ocean to know it's salty.
Mhm.
I've
The gulp
tried.
is enough.
Yeah, so I went straight to God then. I wasn't going to try to take another religion to see. Maybe I
Wow.
stumble upon one of those thousands of religion. Maybe one is true, so I'll have to go through a series of them. So I went straight to the source. Is there a God? And this is where it gets really interesting. Once you remove all the stupid texts, and you go into things like the argument from contingency, the logical necessities, things like the Kalam cosmological argument, things like cosmology and biology, and understand biogenesis, and could things have evolved the way the theory of evolution has told us. And once you open your mind to all these things and engaging God directly, the creator, is there a creator to this world? Because it might be a slightly different agenda, or a completely different agenda than what's marketed in religions. So I've started to engage God immediately, probably at the age of 18, and I got very interested in philosophy. So my first degree, it was in Egypt, and I graduated from a university of languages. This is how I got to learn my languages. Um, uh,
Nice.
then I took on philosophy. I took on first psychology in Ireland, and then philosophy in New Zealand. And these were topics that I wanted to learn about, nothing to do with jobs or career whatsoever. So my job has nothing to do with most of my educations that I've done through my life. My last master, so I do have two master degrees. One is in philosophy. I do nothing with philosophy. I've got postgraduate from University of Cork in psychology. It's nothing to do with my career. My latest master is to do with my career. It's just an MBA to further my professional career. But the other two educations that I've obtained, it was to me searching for the truth, and it's to me it was not in
Mhm.
books written by man. It was I wanted to probe science because this is objective. It's harsh. It's hard. It cannot be twisted. And I thought maybe I can find like Stephen Hawking when he wrote in the very last sentence in the brief history of time, so we can know the mind of God. Uh, and he didn't
Yes.
know God because Hawking is an atheist, but he meant once you understand the fundamental laws of physics and the one superpower that sort of got separated into four power that we dominates the physics today, maybe we can understand the creation uh, power type of thing, and then we can be gods ourselves. But he was again misunderstood, and you get that quite a lot in the Arabic Facebook comments where Einstein has been portrayed as religious because he said so. God doesn't play dice with the universe, and he was talking about quantum mechanics and the Copenhagen interpretation. It was like it's completely
Yeah.
something, but they've taken this as cues. And Stephen Hawking was Muslim and Hanif as well.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he was. It was probably Wahhabi before that as well, you know, and whatever inspiration he had throughout his life derived from the Quran. um, but yeah, even I remember there was I think Richard Dawkins kind of tried to clear it up and quoted Einstein, one of his quotes, and said, "This is like categoric proof that he did not mean God in the way that you all think it." And people went nuts because they're trying to take these guys out of context all the time and kind of attribute something more to them just to obviously feel more comfortable in their position. And also, we have to remember that a lot of these, like insane discoveries and these things that kind of push the frontier of science and human knowledge were at a time when it was still not really okay to just openly say, no, I don't believe in any of these gods that you talk about or proclaim. So it was sensitive ground for a lot of back in the day in history. But it is good to be like, oh, so that's what I wanted to ask you actually. So you've gone back to the notion of God now, and you have like done degrees in philosophy and stuff. So you've obviously like, really kind of tried to get to grips with some principles. And you mentioned Spinoza's God earlier. So how much did that kind of resonate with you, if it did at all, or did you, what was your initial kind of thoughts of that?
Well, to me, Spinoza is one of those people who you would have mentioned in your conversation that maybe they weren't quite ready to reject God altogether. So these are the precursors to atheism. Then, you can't completely abandon God. Remember, epistemology hasn't been developed to the scientific method that we have today. It was still we knew very little about the world around us. So I can completely understand that the first atheists, people like Laplace, when he gone to Napoleon Bonaparte and he's given him a book about the design of the universe, and Napoleon asked him, "Where's God in here?" And he said, "I don't need this hypothesis," and
Wow.
and things like that, ideas like that creeping in. This is Spinoza coming in, maybe to prepare the world for things to come. And he said, no, I think that the God of the Bible is quite petty. That one who has a priority to ban pork over slavery.
Savory,
Uh,
yeah.
it's amazing. He's completely obsessed with prawns or shrimps, and because these things are banned in Judaism.
Yeah.
And
So he's completely obsessed with prawns and
it's weird. It's very strange. Obviously he's not on a seafood diet.
oh my gosh, that's so
He
funny.
likes, what he does in the Bible,
God is a fussy eater,
God
mate.
it says God loves the smell of burning flesh. He
Oh
loves a
my
barbecue.
gosh.
We
He
know that.
loves barbecue.
He's a kebab kind of dude.
That's why he's gonna roast us like shish kebabs in hell.
Yeah, maybe that's the sort of smell he'd enjoy.
Yeah.
But that's his priority.
Mm.
Slavery took us humans to come up with, slavery is not good for us. We need to start abolishing it. And God never occurred to God to say that. So comes Spinoza in here, preparing the world for another type of God, one who is not pity, one who is not small-minded. He's actually not an agent at all. He's that God does not have consciousness. Does
He's
not.
not a personal God meddling into your affairs, on the daily.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a movie that I'm going to recommend to you and to your audience.
Yeah.
It's called Mother by Jennifer Lawrence
Okay.
and Javier Bardem. Um,
Okay.
it's called Mother with an exclamation mark at the end,
Hmm.
and this is a biblical allegory. Anybody who saw this movie, they think it's a horror movie, psychological horror, but it's not. It's hiding biblical references in it. And
Oh
Javier
wow.
Bardem is God, is Yahweh, and uses Jennifer Lawrence is nature, and
Hmm.
he keeps creating the universe. Hey, Hassan.
Yeah, we have Hassan Radwan in the house. Hi,
Oh,
thank you
God,
so much for
Hassan,
being here.
almost 20 years ago now.
Oh wow, you guys
It's
go way
incredible.
back.
Yes. How are you, Habibi? He's written in Egyptian Arabic as well. Zayak Habibi.
Aw.
One of the coolest people he can ever. I mean, he's brilliant. I love Hassan. He's a brilliant mind.
Brilliant, brilliant mind. And honestly, even when I was trying to explore leaving Islam, Hassan Ridwan, your videos I came across, and they were just so resonating. Like they were so nice to hear the way you just dismantled hell and a vengeful God. Honestly, that will never ever leave my mind. So thank you so much. I
And
hope you're
all of
enjoying
that
the
without
conversation.
being resentful or angry. Very, very cool. And he can understand. He can understand why people believe these sort of things. So he's not coming from a place of anger or resentment, which is very important.
Yeah, it's really
Um,
refreshing to see that kind of approach, to be honest. Especially again in this doing what we're doing, trying to put a spotlight on Islam or dogma. Marcus is also asking for the name of the film again. I believe it was Mother with an exclamation
Mother.
mark. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I think it's 2017. Very important movie, I think. So at the very end, so Jennifer Lawrence has got a heart of crystal, and every time he creates the narrative of the story, and it completely collapses on its sort of back. Jennifer Lawrence sort of dies in a fire, and he'll have to grab her heart, which is made of that crystal. And
Hmm.
and at the very end, she told him, "Why do you keep doing that?" And it reminded me of the story from the Crying Game, the story about the scorpion and the frog trying to cross the river, and he
Hmm.
said, uh, "I can't help it; it's in my nature." So it's almost like God's ontology is to create. He can't help but to create. And if that's the God of Spinoza we're talking about, this is not a conscious God. This is the creation energy itself. It's
Yeah.
existence. And if existence is eternal, then you don't need to have a beginning. It's always there.
It's
Nothing.
almost as if it could also play right into like the expansion of the universe, the way that it could just be that in the sense that there's creation and the universe is constantly expanding in that sense. If you take away consciousness from the creator itself, then all of the things we were talking about earlier in terms of holding Allah or a God accountable for things that mere humans had to come and rectify because he wasn't able to foresee, that is clearly a God with either, I mean, you either have to say there's no conscience here, or this is a true evil entity in the cases of the religions that we're talking about, you know.
Well, that expansion is bad news. It's ushering the heat death of the universe, the thermal death, which is
Precisely, it's precise. It's
dilution,
only
and
gonna.
then you end up, yeah, things are going to cool down, and everything's going to collapse. But then that might be the beginning of something else, because the Big Bang has been talked about as it's the beginning of our universe, but that's not necessarily true. It doesn't have to be the ultimate beginning. It might have been singularities could have happened throughout a bubble universe, and or a collapse, or a big bounce type of universe where one universe collapses and the other one sort of begins like a kind of an Ouroboros, the snake that is eating its tail type of infinity situation here. So it's quite interesting, and that's why physics is very important to understand things like that. But you don't need God. See, with biology, biogenesis, because that's another area where intelligent designers come to refute evolution by saying, well, yeah, things are too complex. You could have not come up with the DNA. It's too complex already.
I feel
And
like, Honey, don't you feel like that's such a cop out though? Because I'm like, just because you or whatever, us, even as humans, I mean, a lot of the scientists in like top of their field, they know exactly what they're doing and they have a lot of evidence to the contrary. But like, for example, so a layperson like me trying to understand this, just because I don't understand exactly how it's come about, doesn't mean I automatically should just put God to fill in those gaps, right? The God of the gaps is so annoying because it's almost trying to say, yeah, my mind is and this is actually what Muslims say. Like a caller yesterday on one of the streams was saying, our minds are too weak, we don't understand. God has naturally like made our minds weak. And it's like, no, just because you don't have the answers or the intellectual capacity to understand the complexity behind it, you put a plaster on, you say God is responsible for that complexity, you know. And look, clearly intelligent design, so many things fly in the face of that. We still have remnants of in our bodies that we don't need.
correct.
It makes no sense. So
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
it boils down to one thing. It's an argument from personal incredulity. It's a appeal to ignorance. It's fallacious thinking. But I'm going to be a bit merciful when it comes to religion, because it wasn't all bad, and I've got to be here impartial. And I'm going to say religion at some point, and uniting around an idea bigger than ourselves, was helpful at some point. Remember, this is a world where epistemology was, which is basically, when I talk about epistemology, means our knowledge of the world outside of us or around us. We have not developed enough tools to understand what was going on. And one of the ways, which is more of a Platonic a priori understanding of the world, is somebody would say, well, these are the stories that we've inherited from our parents, and if we stick together, we stick with the story, we'll survive. And that helped. We have not evolved to know the truth. We've evolved to survive. And any idea, even if it does not um, uh, sort of matches reality, it might be good enough to help us survive, because all what you need in a battle is to believe in something, and that will give you that enough psychological energy to fight through life. And I think religion did that at some point in the absence of the right tools to understand what's going on. But once we've developed the proper tools, and I think the scientific method is the best tool to date that we've developed to understand to a degree the world around us. Uh, then religious becomes like that sort of organ, or that bit of human body that you no longer need, like a tail or a wisdom tooth. Eventually, the body's going to reject it, and it is going to be removed in evolution. So, just like bad or genes, I think memes, ideas go through natural selection as well. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, I completely concur with what you're saying, to be honest. I do understand that, as you're saying, these more primitive societies, we needed to believe in something bigger than ourselves. Again, that's so psychologically, that's so motivating, whether you're, you know, going out to hunt for food, or you're going to battle, or you're trying to protect your family, or you're, you know, it's giving you some sense of comfort in that harsh world that we were faced with. But as you said, I do genuinely think that there comes a point in, I mean, I think we're still evolving, right? We're constantly
Oh yeah.
in the process of doing that. And now, as we've come to this point in human progression, as Steven Pinker says, I think we're living in the best times that humans have ever experienced on Earth. So trying to look at it from that optimistic lens, I do think that it's high time we confront the fact that, you know, religion is a byproduct of our like evolutionary infancy. It was something we needed back then, but as you said, it's a limb that now can just be amputated away. It's not necessary. Now when you see people trying to make sense of the world we live in today in 2022 and be part of these diverse pluralistic societies, it's a lot harder to do that when a big chunk of that population genuinely believes in something that is so far from reality, and it's so based in fable and myth. But again, it's people. This is where I have a problem, because I completely agree with you. And now I'm just like, okay, there's some people who will learn about, religion and where it comes from. Like now, because I've delved into the like historical sides of Islam as well. I mean, for me, it's crystal clear, like the historical tapestry of like, paganism and these religions that were knocking about then, and then how all of this kind of evolved, and all the Abrahamic religions have kind of been, meshed through time. But you see the history behind it for what it is. You see humans trying to make sense of eclipses and make sense of these, natural wonders that they're seeing, or things like that. You see how they've become like these exaggerated myths have happened over time, like how Hercules would have happened. And you just see that this is literally a part of like culture shift and humanity and the progression of it. And now it's like, okay, do people read that and accept the truth for what it is and say, you know what, we don't need this, to hell with all of this. We can just all be part of this kind of more progressive world based on the scientific method, and we can accept each other's beliefs. But do you not think that a lot of people still would not ever want to take that step, because that human psychological need for hope or comfort, or this afterlife, this comfort blanket in the afterlife where you'll be reunited with your loved ones and your family, is so strong and overbearing, even if they accept that, like, okay, there's some things in Islam or whatever religion I don't agree with, but I want there to be a God?
So to answer this, I'm going to take you on a sort of a scientific journey.
Sure.
The universe is 13.7 billion years old. The Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. Life emerged on Earth about 3.8 billion years ago. We live for about 3 billion years with just bacteria and singular cell organism. Still no brain or no nervous system to be seen. You get the Precambrian explosion or Cambrian explosion situation, and you get the rise of oxygen, and then you get the flourishing of different species coming about, and you get the precursor.
Just the bubbling of life under the oceans, deep at the bottom.
Yeah, but the Precambrian, now we're talking about almost like sort of full body creature, and we're talking about vertebrates now starting to be introduced, the backbone. And with the backbone, you get sort of a simple nervous system. And what we call that, and the first precursor of the brain, we call it the ancient brain or the reptilian brain, which you still have. It's the back of the brain. That back bit of your brain is called the ancient brain or the reptilian brain, and that's why you become unconscious when you get hit on. And this is where your sex drive, your food, all your primitive impulses that are good enough for you to survive. And we stay with that part of the brain for good 200 million years. And then the migration from cold-blooded animals to hot, warm-blooded animals and mammalians come on the scene, and then you have the oxytocin and all the hormones of the bonding between family members. And this is where morality starts, by the way. This is where the moral compasses start, because before that, remember, reptilians don't care for their offsprings.
Some of them eat their own offspring. Yeah.
That or 500 eggs left on their own to fend for themselves. But a mammalian and the mammalian with the breast and the milk and the feeding, there are hormones flowing around between mother and son and things like that. So this is the first time we're getting together. And then
mammary glands changed a lot.
Middle part of the brain start to evolve, and that's where emotions, a lot of complex emotions, a lot of groups, dynamics, families start to evolve. So, and that's for about 523 million years, right, of ancient and middle brain. The frontal lobe cortex is only developed about 2 or 3 million years ago. This is where your cognitive and critical functions start to evolve. We are in the beginning of the beginning of our logical journey. So I don't have a problem whatsoever why the vast majority of the world's population still display apish tendencies, because I'm not going to be harsh. We've lived with the ancient and the middle brain for quite some time. And I'm going to cut humanity some slack, let that prefrontal lobe cortex be in action for quite some time before we start judging people.
Hanny will check back in another million years when his life has been extended, and he can be like, how's human progression going now? How's that brain development?
Well, if you think of believe quantum mechanics, and there's something
Mm.
called retrocausality, where the future affects the past.
Yeah, there we go.
It's true,
Yeah.
in quantum mechanics that's allowed, because time is an
Oh,
illusion.
wow.
There's no such thing as time in physics. Time is a human construct because of the arrow of time. So
Yeah.
time doesn't really exist in the way. So there could be a situation, especially we live in a simulation universe.
Mm.
1 out of 3, 33% we live in a simulated universe, where somebody's actually telling you what to do and what to say through a program.
In the
But
Matrix.
correct, you gotta stay interesting though, because you can be unplugged at any moment. So do crazy things every now and then, Noria.
I have no chance of being unplugged, don't you worry. I'm living it up. But no, honey, that was really interesting, because that what exactly the way you described it is I mean, when I was trying to wrap my head around it, that example they give of like a year, when they describe like from the beginning of the universe to humans coming about, and like it's condensed into a year, just so our brains can understand that scale of time better, because it is hard for us to grasp concepts as a lay human being, like concepts like infinity, and
Mhm.
like all the stuff that you kind of go heavy into in your talks. That's why I find them so intriguing, because you're trying to make these concepts more accessible to people like us, and try and wrap our head around this. But it's exactly as you said. When somebody gave that year example, I can't remember what it was, but it was literally like January is when the Big Bang, let's say, happened, or that massive initial explosion, and the world came into being. But then the dinosaurs were here till about like September, and it's like the verge of October, November, and we've just come. So like that's like the scale of time. Somebody knows that full proper yearly example. It's really, really a good way of
I
understanding.
think Richard Dawkins does a brilliant job as well, because he talks about the arm length, and he talks about the human age is just one file stroke of a nail, and that would be the age of humanity, which is I find quite fascinating. But it's we're very young. We're still very young.
Okay. Yeah, so that makes sense, and I understand then as well. Maybe I should cut people some some slack. No, because you are right. But so okay, following from that, then do you okay, because I mean, now I'm thinking in the scale of the millions, right? Like this is a grand evolutionary process that we just need to, because obviously our brains have started getting bigger. The moment we developed like fire, and we didn't need to spend as much time chewing and have these bigger jaws, like our brains were already getting bigger and bigger, and they were getting, that we're spending more time thinking about things, and we're engaging those critical elements of our brain. We're not relying on those pleasure impulses anymore solely.
Hmm.
So I mean, do you have, and I'm just going to follow Steven Pinker's line of thinking right now, as in it's just constantly getting better. Is that what you would also say?
I don't know. Better is the right word here. It's different. It's getting finer, because with advancement as well, you come across different type of issues. So with advancement, with technological advancement, you're facing some existentialist sort of annihilation sort of ideas, with nuclear weapons and stuff like that. So it might not be all roses at this point, but it's definitely different. It's definitely different type of challenge. We're gonna get to know more, and as we get to know more, we're gonna have to take responsibility of our own actions. So maturity comes at a cost. Once you face up to your challenges, life isn't easy. That daddy in the sky that used to look after everything. It's a comforting idea. It's a beautiful idea. But once you cut the umbilical cord, you've got to face up to your challenges as a human, and that could be harsh for some people. Some people might find it quite daunting and difficult to deal with. So, but definitely, it is going to be a different future for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I agree. So how did you then, because see, for some people it just seems a lot easier, like when they, not easier, I mean, you don't never know what somebody's actually experiencing inside, or the internal conflict to kind of do away with the afterlife. I mean, I know for myself, like, it was a bit of an existential crisis when the rug of Islam was pulled from beneath my feet, and I had to reevaluate my entire like life and worldview and my reason for being, and what's this all about, and what's the point then, if you take Allah and heaven and hell out, then what's the point? Are we just all here, like, just time passing till we're dead? So you kind of have to go on your own personal journey. And I just want to kind of know, so obviously you didn't have this insane, like, like, you were never taught that this is the one and only truth and you need to believe it. So you had a bit more like leeway, I'm guessing. You had like room
Mhm.
to play around and explore. But how was your transition from thinking, oh, okay, there might be a God, and maybe, what, Spinoza's God is also like still like a possibility in terms of explaining possibly even just like, the universe, but to come to the understanding that, no, you know what, I'm an atheist. I appreciate the scientific method more than any other thing that, humans have come up with to date. And the fact that now that this life is your one and only life. Also, Hanny, can you just answer that question while I go and get the other charger, because this one's not working and it's
No,
gonna.
sure, for sure,
Okay,
for
I'll be
sure.
right back.
Well, the idea of the meaning of life is going to be a futile one. Anybody who's going to engage in sort of the idea of the meaning of life is going to. It doesn't matter, even if you're religious. This is going to be a difficult one to crack, because I don't think there is a meaning of life. However, you can maintain something similar to the meaning in life, which is things that you can, or you deem to be important to you, that you like to pursue, to fill up, or to fill in all the gaps and voids in your. Um, Sorry, there's a bit of background noise. Sorry, guys, I'm going to maybe stop talking because I don't want to burst your ears. So we'll take a moment of silence here. Or okay, the echo has stopped. Um, so yeah, a meaning in life is more likely the type of line of thinking I'm pursuing at the moment, where I've got important things.
Hi, Hanny. Sorry, it
That's all
should be
right.
okay now. Sorry about that. You were saying?
So, I was saying that, I've abandoned the meaning of life type of sort of pursuit long time ago. There is no such thing. It's meaning in life.
Yes.
It's the stuff you deem important for you to achieve, and you. Let's face it. Once this is all done, and once we have all this large scale conversation about the cosmology and the human evolution, you're still going to go back and say what's on Netflix tonight, and I'm going to be the English Premier League is about to be, well, it's been played at the moment, so I'm a crazy for football type of dude, so
Oh,
I'm
the FA
gonna
Cup's
watch.
starting for you.
I know, and I think Hassan is a Spurs fan, and I am a Liverpool fan, so I think they're playing together tonight.
Oh, what a
So big
game.
one. So please help us, Hassan. We want to win over the rich boys of Man City.
Oh my gosh.
um,
Okay, well, we won't keep you too long then, because you've got your football matches to watch. I know, yeah, my family are crazy about football as well, and I think it's a big football weekend coming
that's
up.
what so so things in life, you can fill up your life with bits and pieces that will keep you engaged, that will give your life sort of a meaning. But uh, is there a plan from outside, like somebody has planned and there's a plan for you type of Jesus Christ, God has a plan for you type of weird notion? The Yeah, I think it's very egotistic. I think the right thing to pursue is knowing that you've got certain things you like in life, things you want to pursue. You make an agenda for your life. You think, so I want to, like, I know you're studying your master now, Nuria.
Mm,
Congratulations in advance. So you're
thank you.
pursuing a career in law. You wanna probably push some sort of political agendas in which might be tricky in your line of business, but you will have a voice eventually to be able to be a bit more prominent in that area. So you've got some life goals, and we can fill up our lives with things like that to enjoy the journey. Remember, we are witnessing our thoughts as they happen, because thoughts are involuntary. Whatever you think you're thinking, it's coming, appearing in your mind without you realizing. you've already made up your mind, or your unconscious mind, half a second to 5 seconds prior to you thinking you made a decision. So free will is an illusion. So I might as well just enjoy the ride.
Yeah, no, absolutely. See, Hanny, this is the problem. When I listen to you and I like hear your talks as well, I'm like, oh, like surely there must be something I really disagree with him on. um, but I find myself like by and large agreeing with a lot of what you're saying, and I think that's why I really wanted to have this conversation, because I think like what we've taken away from the journeys, but also the way you understand and see life now as well. Like as you said earlier, it comes through because you don't come from a place of vengeance and trauma. You were actually just like, let's just explore what's out there. Let's see, let's hear every side. Let's just go on this journey and let's learn. And as you said, it's not so much the lack of meaning of life because now there's no concept of an afterlife or divine justice. I know a lot of people rely on divine justice to kind of settle any massive wrongdoings that have happened to them on earth. For example, like a lot of Muslims I know, if they've been, they weren't able to marry the love of their life, or they've had to compromise their life with somebody else, or they've just been, really knocked around hard by life, they are waiting for this justice, this divine justice they're going to get in the next life. But in doing so, what they do is kind of waste this life away, just not to say they're wasting their time without saying they are wasting their time,
But
but
it's almost
perhaps
like accepting victimhood. This sort of mentality gets you to accept victimhood. We
yeah.
know that most of the atrocities have committed by man and have been changed by man.
Hmm.
We have committed the things that we've changed so far. God has never intervened in any of that. We know that if we want to have a practical and understanding of laws and the repercussions, theocracies right now are having trouble with human rights, with standards of living and everything. Laws that run in most civilized countries now has nothing to do with divine command theory whatsoever. They are humanly developed laws where we talk to each other and we come to an agreement of what's reasonable, and that will change with more knowledge and information as they evolve. If you have a stable or a fixed type of rule of conduct given to us from up above, from God, for us to pursue, and it's fixed, then how are you going to advance as humanity? And any country or any nation that sort of uses that sort of moral compass right now, they are failing big time as a civilization, or as a culture, as a country, in all sort of human aspects. Those who have freed themselves from the intervention of God and develop laws that are reasonable based on science and debates and critical thinking are leaps ahead now. So if we want an example of this, it's right in front of us, and it's quite evident to everyone.
Yeah, I completely agree. And just to like, piggyback off what you were saying, the problem with, I honestly think this is contrary to like general human nature and progression, as we were talking about this constant evolution that we're still going through. Um, if you take an ideology, and I'm going to just pin the focus on Islam again, because that's my experience, but if you take something like Islam, for example, and you're saying that we're going to keep getting better, right? Our laws are going to keep getting better. Our morality is going to keep getting better. Our understanding of the world is going to continuously improve. Then you've got something like the Quran, or an ideology like Islam, which says we are going to take 7th century Arab desert Bedouin culture and enshrine it in this book and make you live in, like, literally that is, you're shackled now to live with that worldview and the morality of that time, however detrimental that is for humanity. But you're stuck, you're almost frozen in time if you
Yeah,
adhere to one of these
which
ideologies and
which
stick
is
to it.
another fallacious logical thing. It's called appeal to antiquity. There are
Hmm.
people out there that will go, oh, they don't make them like that anymore.
Yeah.
That sort of nostalgia that somehow we think the past is always better than today, and it comes with generations. I've started to feel it. I've got that bias now because I was born in 1972. So
Yeah.
I belong to an era where I can, you start watching Netflix and you start watching modern shows with 80s themes, like the Stranger Things or, things like that. And you have
Yeah.
that sort of, oh my God, the music were cooler, the rappers were a lot better, the lyrics were really good, and it's horrible today. So I've already start feeling it. I'm
Yeah.
already trapped.
Oh no, I think it happens, as you get older, you're like, oh, back in my day, it was so much. I'm always calling out my parents for doing that as well. And I'm like, it was terrible back then, admit it. But yeah, so no, again, that's I think that's a massive problem. And I think so a lot of people talk about, okay, well, let's reform Islam, or let's kind of take out the bad bits and let's try and focus on the good bits. And I'm not sure that that's possible. Personally speaking, I don't think that that's a viable solution, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on what do you think about people who say that, like, oh, it's not all bad. It teaches you to give charity and be good and be nice to orphans. No adoption, we know why, but be nice to
Then we
orphans.
can do it without religion. I mean, we don't need God then. So if we can do that independent of the divine idea, you don't need God to tell you that you need to be nice to orphans. You do it because this is human collaboration. I've argued morality can never be based on divine command theory, because that will make the Euthyphro dilemma, the old dilemma between Socrates and Euthyphro, when the conversation, is it good because God says so, or
Or is
God
it?
says so because it's good?
Yeah.
And both ways, it's going to end up with morality being arbitrary, because God could say, do not kill, and 5 seconds later say kill, and that becomes good then, because killing in that occasion becomes good because God commands it to be that case. So that will always fall on its face. Morality is relative. It changes with time. It changes with information. We're developing morality around the Tesla model self-driven cars. There
Mm-hmm.
are people's ethical groups that are talking about, okay, in case of a collision, who should the car hit? The pregnant woman, the old man, or the child?
Mm-hmm.
In a trilemma. So the world isn't black and white. It's more like 50 shades of gray. It's the primitive thinking of the world of black and white, binary 0 1 1 1 0 0 0 1. It's gone. If
Mm-hmm.
you're going to think about life properly, if you're going to think about situation, it's always a spectrum. That's the only way you can think about life.
Even Hanny, with the morality around Tesla and things like that you were saying, even that, when they're like, okay, but at the end of the day, this is a machine and this is AI, it's not going to think in the way that a human would. So if it was, for example, to see like a child and an old man, it may go and hit the child, but what would a human do? And they're having all of these like thought experiments, and they're saying they're actually trying to mimic the morality of a human in that moment
Correct.
into the AI. So
Correct.
yeah.
Correct.
But again, yeah.
The only problem is when the AI starts to override human protocols and start to think on its own. This is another brilliant movie called Ex Machina,
Mm-hmm.
where an AI finally become conscious.
Oh wow. A
It's
human screwed as a result?
fantastic. It's called Ex Machina. You got to watch this. I'm a big fan of movies because they sometimes have deliver very strong messages. The good ones in movies,
Yeah.
they can do that.
Yeah, most definitely. And thank you so much for the other recommendation. The other recommendation, guys, if you weren't here before, was Mother with an exclamation mark. Jennifer Lawrence was in that,
Yes.
and that's a like a parable on a biblical tale. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
want to ruin it because a lot of
Don't
people
really.
don't see that, but your audience would be very privy to the Bible and the narrative. They will catch on pretty quickly.
Yeah.
My wife is born atheist. You see, so my wife
So
was never,
lucky.
yeah, but
Born free.
she does not have the interest and pursue.
Mhm.
She's like, she finds all of this a sort of waste of time. It's like,
You know what? Maybe that's the thing. Maybe if you come from the complete opposite, you find it so interesting because you're like, I was going down a completely different path for so long. My brain was actually wired differently. Like honestly, Hanny, when you're believing in certain myths and things just because of this like belief element, I feel like when you come out of this, honestly, you neurologically change the way your brain thinks when you start enabling critical thinking and you start like, seeing these issues. You're not like for me, when I left Islam, everything went with it, like my fear of hell, fear of jinns, all of this crap that I used to believe in is just like, oh, none of that is real. I can just get on with life. I
Remember,
should be more wary of burglars and muggers, not jinns.
epigenetics is a thing. Even though we're born with some precursors to a certain disposition, but there are markers in genes where, with interactions with the environment outside, they can be altered a little bit.
Yeah.
So you can almost steer yourself in a slightly different direction, or use a natural tendency in a slightly different way. So let's say you are born with high adrenaline situation, or you're prone to violence, right? You could end up being a criminal or a thug, or you
Mm.
can be an army officer, or a UFC fighter, or an Olympic champion for your country. So you can tame natural tendencies to choose a better use for that particular tendencies, if it can be used incorrectly or used in a way to harm yourself or society. So that's where there's a little bit of a gap there for even though I don't think free will exists, but I think there might be some leeway of tuning things a little bit to your liking.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And okay, so honey, I'm gonna let you go in the next 5 minutes. I'll let you go
So
catch up with your football. But I just wanted to ask you, obviously you decided to, I'm not sure how long you've actually been on YouTube. I came across you a couple of months ago, and then, we
only a
had
couple
that
of
initial.
years ago. Yeah,
Okay.
my channel is young, a couple of years ago.
Oh, nice. So could you just tell my audience a little bit, because I know what we found out you're a polyglot today, but I've seen a lot of your bilingual topics, and obviously I listen to all your English content more. But yeah, if you could just kind of enlighten us, so what drove you to kind of come on and do this, and where are you going with your channel?
So I've started my channel trying to. I wasn't trying to collide directly with religion, but I wanted to raise awareness, because I think religion isn't the reason for every single failing in the Middle East, or those who still believe in religion, but it's the ignorance, really. There's a lot of failed educational systems where, because I still maintain you could be somebody who's religious, and at least your religion does not let you sort of attack others, or defy science. There's a lot of Muslim scientists who, when they enter the lab, they sort of not abandon God, but they put the faith thing aside and they follow the scientific method, and they're cool. We can live along, not a problem whatsoever. Um, so I was trying to more bring issues of philosophy, epistemology, like how do we know that we know, sort of say, what's epistemology, what are reliable sources. So I want to basically strike the reliability of a narration, of a chain of a story, like it's basically the hadith is playing telephone, or
Yeah.
the Chinese whisper. I think telephone
The telephone game. Yeah.
yeah. So, you do this experiment with 20 kids, and you'll be laughing at the very last kid, because they will be doing and saying something completely different than what was uttered initially. Imagine doing this over 1400 years, and have geographical divides. So I'm sure the story would have changed. So when I engage epistemology, and how do we know what we know, and what is the definition of epistemology, of what is justified true belief, what does it entail, and can that be applicable to the knowledge they got about Islam, slightly indirectly, but eventually get there, and get them to
Mhm.
probe. And you can actually use that skill in multiple things in your life, even after you abandon religion, especially when biases come in hand. So Johnny Depp, Amber, what's her name?
Amber Heard.
Amber Heard.
Yeah.
Um, it depends on where you are, and who you're going to believe. Are you a feminist? Are you a crazy feminist who's going to say, "I'm going to believe the woman regardless"? Or are
Hmm.
you a Johnny Depp fan who thinks
Hmm.
Johnny Depp, absolutely, he can never, the butter won't melt in his mouth, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, and you'll catch a lot of biases in between. And where is the truth? Where is truly the truth? Are we going to get to know the truth ever? or the truth is somewhere mixed in between, and whoever can manipulate information and come up with a better story will always win the day. So this is quite interesting. But I'm watching this and I'm not taking sides. And I'm going to be watching this, and I'm going. This is very. It's not. It's above gossip or trivia or that kind of thing. For me, it's a very interesting situation because it's allegations, and it's a how do we find out the truth, and where our biases are going to lead us to. But we do that every day. We do that every day without
Yeah.
realizing. We believe those who we like, and we don't believe those who we don't like, even though the ones that we don't like might be the honest ones at some point, but we're geared to believe those who we like, or we find attractive, or we find witty or funny. It's crazy. The human brain is quite deceiving.
Yeah, 100%. And our brain has so many even like like tendencies naturally in itself, in the way that we're like more pattern seeking as humans. So if we see a pattern of some kind, we're more likely to kind of, believe that, or find some meaning in that. And we've got a lot of these kind of like twerks, as you said, and they all infringe the unbiased nature of the way we are going about our search for the truth. Which is why I really appreciate it, because obviously what you've studied and the fact that you speak so many languages, you kind of can bring all of that together, and they lend itself really well to the conversations you have, which are like, imagine a cluttered room and you're just kind of like unpacking it and clearing it out slowly, and just kind of narrowing the issues and the trajectory to what is essentially lending us, if not closer to the truth, but asking the right questions, which will help us get there. So I really appreciate what you've been doing, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. Especially for me, I'm even more grateful that you reaching out in the same. If you're doing the exact same kind of content in Arabic, or slightly tweaking it for the Arab audience, I think that's really important. Again, like when these kind of conversations are pushing the boundaries of English, when they're happening in Urdu, in like the Pakistani scene, when they're happening in Hindi, in the Indian scene, when they're happening in Arabic, especially these countries where religion has dominated the psyche for so long that most of the previous generations have not even thought about anything to the contrary. But now, as we see people questioning more, and the internet having everything readily available, people are asking all the right questions. And the fact that we can push the boundaries and joke about them. There's movies out there as well.
Yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
laughing at Harris.
Is he
He's
creating a scene in the
a
chat?
fellow
What's he saying?
Aussie. He's saying, I must be a Jordan Peterson fan because my room is immaculate. It's a funny one. Actually, I disagree with Jordan Peterson on a lot of things.
Yes. Okay.
I'm not a Jordan. No, I find him interesting though. He's very complex. The guy's complex. I find him interesting, but I don't buy his metaphorical truth and idea, and the Jungian archetype, and trying to smuggle Jesus. Sam Harris.
Yeah, literally smuggle Jesus.
Yeah.
Smuggle Christian morality
He's
in there. Just
he's a
Salt Bay.
smuggler. That's funny.
Yeah, he's a smuggler. And what did you say Allah was earlier? The schemer, not the best of deceivers. They call him the schemer, right?
It's kind of a more sort of it's more sophisticated word,
It is. It's not outright deception. It's like very highly thought about scheming.
Yeah, because it's kind of the thing you do when you have a cigar and a brandy, kind of.
Yes, you scheme with your leather armchair. And Horace is saying, I am too. I don't think he agrees with everything Jordan Peterson says. He was just poking fun at you. But yeah, you're based in Melbourne as well, aren't you, Hanny? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes, yeah.
Oh yeah, the C2B. This is what I agree. I agree as well. To a large extent, I agree. There's obviously like this needs unpacking too, but overall, he's a very, very smart man. But again, as Hanny was saying, this smuggling.
I don't think Jordan Peterson is religious. I really don't think he is.
Really? You think it's a bit of an act?
No. I think he's more like Nietzschean. Because Nietzsche, when he said God is dead in his Zarathustra novel, he was when it was claimed that God was dead, he wasn't partying, he wasn't celebrating. He was quite alarmed, annoyed, because he thought, he was afraid of humanity to sort of
like moral
fall into
debauchery.
oblivion, because we're not ready. he's afraid for, because remember, and this is where you have to be careful in a remote Pakistani village or an Egyptian village where people cannot write and read, and they don't know the difference between basic knowledge in life, and you take away religion, be careful of that vacuum that you can leave. You're gonna have to fill up first with something else, morals that can stand on its own feet, a bit of knowledge, a bit of ways of approaching knowledge and obtaining knowledge. But if you take away probably the one thing that keeps them sort of sane, or keeps them, the repercussions might be quite dangerous. So, and that's why knowledge is very important. That's why what you guys keep exposing bad ideas and other people giving lectures on science and bits. You need all of that happening together at the same time. But that's why Nietzsche and even Karl Marx, when he talks about the religion as the opiates of the people, again, he's been misquoted. He actually, if you complete the sentence, and he says, and the awe and the cry of the sort of kind of the broken soul type of thing. He's mentioning it on a consoling type of term, that
Yeah, almost like a therapeutic, like the opium of the masses. It keeps them all kind of like in that happy days, if you will.
But people quote these two, Nietzsche and Karl Marx, out of context. And that's something I don't like, because that dishonesty about bringing just the first sentence to get you to where you want to be, but not finishing it all. Because I think these two.
You must love Muslim imams then, Hanny.
But they don't mind you. They don't mind quoting you that you're saying things out of context when it suits them.
Yeah.
That's out of context.
Exactly. Contextual is very subjective in this.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, thank you so much for that. I'll just run through some of the super chats really quickly, and then we can wrap this up. Is that cool?
Yeah, absolutely.
I also just want to awesome, thank you. I just want to also share Hanny's channel with you guys. This is Critical Faculty with the wonderful Einstein there. So as you can see, Hanny's got like a bunch of videos, and I think they alternate, right, Hanny? English, Arabic, English, Arabic?
Not necessarily in that order. So if you maybe go to the playlists on the right-hand side of the videos, and then you can find the English conversations. And obviously, if somebody's sort of can understand Arabic, they can see the Arabic contents. But I do have the English contents on its own. And I have conversation. I'm going to have another conversation with Lawrence Krauss. It's going to be his 6th time to appear in Critical Faculty. I'm going to have Michael Shermer again. I have people like Dan Barker, obviously Robert Price. I've got a weekly episode with Robert Price now. But I've got different type of English speakers. We speak philosophy, science. Dave Farina from Professor Dave. We do biogenesis. Aaron Ra. So people like that we tend to sort of have a conversation with. But I do have my own material as well. Plus, I do Clubhouse audio rooms as well for people like they want to listen to a conversation while they're driving a car. So it's just an audio only type of material.
Oh yeah, because I came across that Clubhouse thing, and then I was listening to the Arabic ones because I'm really trying to improve my Arabic. You guys, yeah. So I saved the Arabic ones to try and listen to, and I kind of follow. Actually, it's just when it gets like a bit, intense, I'm like, oh, I need to go back to English. I don't know what they're saying here, but yeah, so that's really good. I like that you have a nice kind of combination, and just the listening as well really, really helps, because the stuff you've done with Robert Price, and when it was all kind of kicking off, I think with Myth Vision as well, and you had him back, and I was like, wow, I wanted to hear him clarify. And I think the way you handled that conversation, again, I just really like your style. It's very Socratic in your approach to handle really, really hot topics.
Maria, in all honesty, that's why I'm still friends with both of them. And I just don't understand the cancel culture. I don't think it does anything when you cancel somebody. If you disagree with their opinion, you want to engage with them because you want to either change their opinion or show that the world did wrong. Canceling them out of the equation, it doesn't take the problem hasn't gone away.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? You actually give them that chance to kind of like clear it up for the masses in general as well, because you've almost been tarnished with, what you get tarnished with one of those words these days, and you're almost done for. So the fact that you give them a chance to unpack what can ordinarily seem like something completely cancelable, you kind of, you step back and you say, let's just discuss this from, even though I'm coming from the complete opposite end, how far can we meet in the middle? And it was a very, very constructive conversation. And that's why I think I really wanted to have you on my channel as well, because I'm not here to be like, Muslims and all confrontational. I just like conversations where I can genuinely learn something from the other person. And it's more of like a fruitful discussion, as opposed to, any form of like hardcore, let's just go at each other and or like bash religion. Like it's not what it's supposed to be. But yeah, so please go ahead and subscribe to Hanny's channel. As you can see, he's got so many amazing guests, and if you do speak Arabic, this is like a treasure trove for you. So real quick before we wrap up, I will let you guys get to your football and enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Just the super chats real quick. Secular Sakai said, keep thinking outside the box, or the Kaaba in particular. Nuria, yeah, I like that too. Definitely think outside that box, that's for sure. Thank you so much, Secular Sakai, for your support and for being here. And then we had a question from Stop Scamming Man. Let me just bring it up. Here we go. Stop Scamming Man, thank you so much for your super chat and for watching. I hope you enjoyed our chat. Stop Scamming Man is saying, as shown in the YouTube video, Sheikh Uthman caught lying about enslaving women and children. Uthman wants a new caliphate that does wars of aggression and enslavement. He intends to visit the UK soon. Maybe a petition should stop him coming. Yeah, I actually did not know that he was planning to come to the UK. I also don't follow him that much. I try not to follow Muslim sheikhs because they really bring me down. I don't need to listen to that kind of stuff.
I'd say let him in and put him under scrutiny. Put him in a room and say, well, okay, well, tell us what's in your mind.
That's the thing. I don't think the petition is obviously a good idea where there's like a real safety issue. But I think in the UK, we have this space where let's just let them in, as Hanny's saying, let's get them to the university or wherever they want to lecture and talk, and, let them use their free speech card and let them defend what they're saying and say these things out loud in 2022. And let's see the public response to it. We've seen people like Mariam Namazi from the Council of Ex-Muslim Britain was doing this like years ago, kind of going to the universities and counter, like speaking about the actual facts of Sharia law counter to what these imams propagate in their mosques, which they're more than free to do in England. But she dealt with so much scrutiny from these like Muslim goons that would come and sit in the front seat and antagonize her and try and throw her off her presentation. And again, that's just so disrespectful, but that speaks to Muslim behavior. I think in the West in 2022, we should be able to let him be here, listen to what he's saying. The second he incites, actual violence or calls for violence, you nip it in the bud. That's the laws we have in place.
Remember, Nuria, bad and evil ideas sort of flourish in darkness. You wanna shed the light on them so you can demolish them once and for all. That's the only way you can demolish bad and evil ideas. They love the darkness. They love to fester in the darkness of ignorance.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And that's very true. Exactly. So we need to shine light on these issues and say, nope, that doesn't happen anymore. But shutting them and locking them away and keeping them out is not going to help. The more they speak, in a way, it's actually easier for us to do our job, because we can say, look at what they're propagating. And this is going against the very basics of, the fundamental laws we have in place here. So he could, by all means, he can believe that, but there's no way that anything can come of it, especially coming to the UK and trying to spout nonsense like this. But again, I could go on about the UK because I think they could strive harder to tackle extremist ideology a little bit more, but that's a conversation for another day. So thank you, Stop Scamming Man. And Norse Mythology, a regular mod and supporter, thank you so much for being here and for your super sticker and for being an amazing mod. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. And then we had AD5. Thank you so much for your super sticker. Yeah, I guess thank you so much for your support, everybody. Stop Scamming Man is following up. Thank you again. I'm against Uthman being censored completely and utterly. I don't want his social media inhibited in any way. However, stopping him entering Britain would send the right message in my view. Yeah, So again, this is what I'm saying. Britain has not acted, in so many ways where they could just be a little come down a bit harder, because there are parts of the UK which are becoming real serious threats in terms of like pockets of Muslim communities where we have no control over what's being spouted in those khutbahs, so like the sermons at the mosque and things like that, and with like the radicalization that's happening through like within families in these areas. I shared a video on Twitter the other day of this man in England having his 2 young sons walk towards the ISIS flag and kiss it, like basically swearing allegiance to it. And they're filming this in their front garden in England. And it's like, you're living here and you are literally swearing allegiance to a terrorist organization. And you've kind of imprinted that in your children. So no matter what, those children aren't going to be going to a primary school, and you can bet your best like rags that they're not going to be assimilating and integrating with children from other faiths, and it's very problematic. But I mean,
No,
stopping
Nuria.
him entering, I think, would have a huge backlash. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, my only problem with this approach, or my only fear rather,
Mm.
is how this situation could end up making him a hero, and it will be used as, oh, look at them, they're afraid of the truth, they're shutting down the truth. If they were brave enough and as transparent enough, why don't want to hear us out and hear our argument? They're doing that because they're afraid of the truth, and you're going to get young, impressionable people who will start adopting in an underground movement his ideas and ideologies in the UK, and might end up doing things on the ground that can have huge repercussions. So I would rather bring this guy and bring a lot of intellectuals in a town hall and trap them and say, okay, you tell us why it's good for society, advocate for your idea. Like back in the day, I think in the UK, you guys have the conversations that happen in the Oxford and Cambridge, where you have
Mm.
a proper full on a conversation and a debate about a topic, and bring them along. And I think ideas like that needs to be defeated right in the light.
Exactly. And I agree with you that the hero that he could become, that's how I was saying the potential like backfiring that could have, the banning of him, is because especially Muslims, if they feel like one of their big mans or their big shots
Right.
is victimized or vilified, they will jump on that. And like Hanny's saying, that could inspire such a kind of like, a huge kind of momentum behind it. And again, people who have a soft spot for him and cling to his ideology and his thought processes could just take that to a whole other level. Also, we are in England in 2022. We've got places like Speaker's Corner and stuff, which, despite what's happened there recently and how kind of unsafe it is for certain people like quote unquote ex-Muslims or even ex-Christians, Christian ex-Muslims, like what happened to Khatun. Um, this is the marketplace of ideas. So as Hanny's saying, let him come and let him spew his ideas, and let's challenge those ideas all the way to the core, and let's see how long he can stand up to these claims and these propagations of the worldview that he wants. It just won't fly. They've got their own fans, but on the grand scheme of things, what he's saying
Don't
is
you
so
have? I
controversial.
think I was thinking of Douglas Murray. I think Douglas Murray would be a good one to bring to this chat.
Yeah. Also, honey, I was gonna say you should fly over for this, mate, as well. Come
Uh,
get him.
I'll bring some tomatoes and eggs and.
Now, we need an intellectual
uh,
fight.
I still have some primitive apish, despite all the sophistication. I'm still an ape.
It still comes down to let's chuck some eggs at their house. Yeah. But yeah, no, thank you so much, Stop Slang Man. I hope that does answer your question and kind of gives you like our views on it. Um, Other than that, I just wanted to say Hassan Redwan was saying, great live stream, Nuria. Awesome seeing you, Hanny. Much love, mate. Oh, you guys are like reunited today. I'm happy.
We were in a forum at 20 almost 20 years ago now, on the ex-Muslims of, I can't remember, Britain, and we were exchanging. We were all working under different sort of aliases and code names. I think I used to be called Old Brains with the Einstein low, and we all sort of hiding. Then it was fun, but it was fun, and the amount uh, of fun we used to have chatting and dissecting everything together. It was fun times for sure.
Oh, I can imagine. I would have loved to be a fly on the wall for those conversations, honestly. But yeah, so that was like all when you guys were all in the closet in a way, like under pseudonyms and stuff. This is what this movement has gone through, people. But yeah, I think that's it. Oh, CEMB forum back when ex-Muslim wasn't a thing. Okay, yeah, good old
Yeah,
days.
a few of us.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So, but I don't know, Horace joined. I don't know if you had a question or anything, but he has dropped off. So, Hanny, I'll let you go watch the footy, and I could talk to you for hours. Honestly, we could have gone into
I
any
know,
more
but
of these things.
I was gonna suggest, Nuria, that part two of this conversation, I'm going to return the favor and thank you for being such a gracious host, and you've got beautiful, very smart audiences. I can see the type of conversations you're having. So you're very lucky that way. I get some mixed bag. I've got a lot of Arabic people commenting, and sometimes the complete non sequiturs, the utterances drive me mad. But uh, we can do the second part on my channel in the next couple of weeks, if you wish.
Yeah, sure. I'd absolutely love to. It would be my pleasure. Like I said, we can talk for hours. That's why even today, it was nothing like preempted. We didn't have a set forum. We were literally like, let's just have a chat and see what comes out. But I did want to kind of get like this holistic view on you and your journey and how you are so like just so great in your approach now. And I think you have brought it to light. So thank you so much for sharing that with us and with my audience, and for the compliments to my audience, because guys, whoever you are, my entire audience, you get so many compliments whenever I'm live with somebody. They're looking at the chat and they're like, your audience are so funny and clever and witty, and I'm like, I love you all. Whoever's giving us this great rep, guys, keep it coming. This is amazing. But yeah, we'll definitely have Hanny back on here as well. I think Hanny will choose a topic that's kind of really of interest, and we can go ham on a topic like that. And yes, pun intended, because Islam bans ham. But yeah, Hanny, anything you want to say, and then we can wrap it up.
No, this is fantastic. I've enjoyed my time so much. I think we talked about maybe we can start some sort of a series, but back and forth, home and away games
Yeah.
between your channel and my channel, and we can start taking some ideas like evolution and bits and pieces, and maybe because I'm not interested in attacking religion sort of directly, but in a way, if you end up talking about evolution or physics, eventually it's gonna bring religion to scrutiny, but maybe in a rather indirect way.
Yeah, no, for sure. And as I said, this post leaving religion aspect, this whole window that you delve into, I am all there. So anything you want to kind of discuss in that sphere of things, I'm more than happy to, because I learned so much from you, Hanny. So I actually have to tip my hat off to you. I've learned so much from you, and I really
Thank you
appreciate
so
what
much.
you're doing.
Thank you. I've
Okay.
enjoyed my time. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, everybody, have a fab Saturday. Go have some fun, enjoy yourselves. Until next time. Bye-bye.